Hey, welcome everybody to Hope for Our Times. And I have a very special guest today, first time ever. And we're going to be talking about online influencers and the manufacturing engagement that takes place through moral confusion, because we are seeing a massive amount of confusion. We see it on various items, but specifically what I want to talk about today is something that one of the very popular people out there, he seems to refer to a lot. He says something like this: there's less Christians now in Israel than there was when Israel became a nation in 1948. And I think I've been there. I know that's absolutely not true. Not only that, but also the other things that are said. There's more freedoms to be a Christian in a Muslim nation than there is in Israel. And I think, what on earth, where does this guy live? And obviously he's not giving the truth, but people believe it. In fact, they just take it as if he's a theologian, which he is not, as if he's a historian. Listen, he's a smart guy, but he doesn't bring historical facts to the table. So what in the world is really going on? So to help us understand that, my guest today is Bill Forliano. Bill, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, pleasure. I'm so happy to be with you, Pastor Tom. Thankful for the opportunity.
All right, well, we're going to have a great time. You wrote a piece on the grift zone, how online influencers manufacture engagement through moral confusion. But there's so much going on. And I almost hate to give anybody more attention by mentioning their names, but I'm going to. You have Candace Owens, you have Nick Fuentes, you have Steve Bannon now, Marjorie Taylor Greene. The list just goes on, and Tucker Carlson. I wanted to get into some things, and here's one of the reasons why. Is because when it comes to not being deceived, if you're a Bible-believing Christian and you look at the left, it's just total insanity. You can see it's so far off the mark. It's just so obvious, and you think, well, that's absurd. But what's happened and really been exposed is what's coming from the right, which people are having a lot more difficult time understanding and defending. If they're a Christian, they're thinking, well, that makes sense. For example, there's the Christ the King movement. And people say, well, of course. You know, you start looking at that and you go, well, but wait a minute, and how bad Israel is. And people hear these things and go with it. So I want to look at some things and help people to understand and be better educated along the way. So if you're ready to roll, we'll just start right in.
Let's do it.
All right. So here we go. Ready?
Okay.
I'll just start
ready.
here. Tucker Carlson says there's less Christians now than there were back in as Israel became a nation. So I want to put that, and I'd like to hear your comment on some of the numbers. So these are numbers coming from the UN, because I thought, well, we can always trust the UN. So according to the UN, there currently are, in 2024, there were 180,000 Christians in Israel. That does not include in Bethlehem or Nazareth or Gaza or any of those, Judea and Samaria. It doesn't include any of that, none of that. 180,000 in 2024. That number, according to the UN, grew by 5,000 in 2025 to 185,000. But Tucker Carlson says there's less. He says there's less now than there were back in 1948 when Israel was founded as a nation, officially the second time. But then the UN admits those numbers included Bethlehem, all of Judea and Samaria, now included all of those areas. And still the numbers were significantly lower when Israel was founded as a nation, including all of those areas. So these things are lies. And my guess, Bill, is how this is done, and he's able to say it and make people think it's true. You take Bethlehem and you say, well, in 1948, for example, there were, let's say, 50,000 Christians. I'm just giving you a number in general. Let's say there were 50,000 in Bethlehem in 1948. Now there's only, say, 5,000. Just throwing out numbers, right? So
Yes.
he's able to say, well, look, here it is, the city the Lord was born in, and look how many Christians aren't here. And he says it's because of Israel. It's actually because the Muslims, you have Hamas in Gaza, and then you have in Judea and Samaria, you have, what's his name, Mahmoud Abbas and the PLO. And, you interview people who are in bed with PLO and Hamas. Anyways, I've spoken for 5 minutes already. I haven't let you say a word. So
I think,
what are your thoughts
listen,
on this?
I think you said the context beautifully. I mean, but people really want to understand Tucker Carlson. They have to understand something that is a little bit counterintuitive. And it's that, and this is my opinion, just as an observer, I think he mispositions the arguments that he makes just a little bit on purpose, because what people don't readily or easily understand about wielding influence online is that you need the engagement. You don't need to speak the truth. You don't need to say something that's accurate. You need to say something that gets people's attention. Attention is what equals power. And so when Tucker Carlson goes and sits in Jordan just across the fence and he shakes his fist at Israel and makes incredibly uninformed or ignorant statements like that, you're right. He's smart enough to know what he's doing. Those numbers that you just cited are published by widely recognized institutions who we don't always necessarily trust, but in this particular case, provide evidence that is so obviously dismantles the basis of the argument that he wants to make, that you wonder, like, you know, Tucker's a studied guy. He's an intelligent guy. Did he really miss that memo? No, he's mispositioning the argument on purpose, because the way that you secure attention is to create some kind of cognitive dissonance. So you make a statement like, I hate Christian Zionists more than anybody that I know. Well, Christian Zionism within the evangelical circles is the majority of the coalition, of the current governing coalition. So to say something like that is to be intentionally disruptive, and he's doing it on purpose just to stir up attention. Now, the other thing that it does too is it gives them a chance to take the temperature of the constituency and to see just how informed or how ignorant they are. And what they try to do then is to target the people who are nominal in their understanding and then indoctrinate them into thinking differently than what the current baseline holds. And, you know, make no mistake about Tucker Carlson. Jeremy Boring did an interview with Trigonometry, the Trigonometry podcast recently, and it was excellent. And he, in that interview, talked about how Tucker has really undertaken a political project. He's not a fool. He's not a ranting idiot. He isn't someone who hasn't been around the block. He's been watching how all of this works for decades. He's been in the mix of it. He understands in a very nuanced way. He's very sophisticated in his understanding. And I think what he has set about to do, if you can believe it, not even a year into the current administration after a historic election win, what he's set about to do is to get out in front of trying to remake the coalition after Trump. And some of the things that he wants to accomplish are to marginalize evangelical influence. And I don't exactly know why. I mean, I think at least part of it is rooted in the fact that he's really has genuinely come to hate Israel, which is, inexplicable. I mean, I can't explain it. That is the forward operating base of Western civilization in a very, very difficult part of the world, challenging part of the world. And the fact that we're not dealing so much with radical Islam here in the U.S. is precisely because of the alliance that we have with that country and the fact that it functions as the front line in a manner of speaking for us. So why he suddenly has divested himself of all of that, I can't fully explain. But I can tell you this. They want to get out in front of making a new coalition. They very much want to get out in front of making a new coalition, and they're willing to do that now. And part of what they need to do is to scoop up portions of the constituency that aren't well informed, to figure that out, to say outrageous things for attention, and to start to fashion a new coalition around the ideas that they want to carry forward. And that's really what you see Tucker doing. So he's sophisticated. It's not like Candace I would agree with Jeremy on this. It's not like Candace, where she's just out there self-aggrandizing and kind of carried off by her own out-of-control narcissism. Tucker is targeting objectives and trying to work in such a way as to consolidate governing power as we move into the next election season for the next president. Now, what I find so offensive, and what I think so many people find offensive about watching him doing this, is that we're not even a year into the existing administration, and he's already out in front trying to do this. It kind of reveals just how trivial politics really can be. And then here you have a guy who has fought back against, for whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, this guy has fought back against unprecedented political persecution, back to the wall. Go back and watch the video of the speech that he did after he left office, after that Joe Biden win. And you will see that there is a man there who was absolutely at the bottom, only to suffer persecution on the other side of that speech. And then it progresses to the point where there are multiple attempts on his life, and the guy doesn't back down. He ends up staying committed and ends up winning probably one of the most prolific electoral victories that we'll ever see in our lifetime. Okay, it was like totally historic. Anybody who watched election night, who saw the dishonesty and what had unfolded and the way that he lost the prior one, felt a sense of vindication that probably was hard to express. And then we're not even a year on the other side of this prolific win, and you have people reaching for the mantle already. And I think actually he sees it. He's been around power for a long, long time. And I think he sees the opportunism. It's not anything new to him. He's been around the rich and powerful for a long time. He's watched people operate around him to create influence and favor for a long time. So I think he gets it. But on the other side of such a historic win for these guys now and there's a whole group of them, unfortunately, some of them are tied in with institutions that we would want to trust and throw our support behind. But that's a little murky. But they know what they're doing. They're trying to get out in front. They think Trump's going to be a lame duck in pretty short order here. And so when you see Tucker, understand, just to summarize it, he's undertaken a political project to try to remake the coalition. He wants to start on it now, which is totally premature and backfiring on him. He's chosen to do it by attacking the heart of the conservative coalition, which is evangelical Christianity, which was super foolish. And now he's just committed to it hook, line, and sinker. It's amazing. He's doing a full send on this little project of his. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to end very well for him, because you can't just displace, but I think like 80% of the Christian coalition are Zionists. So it's wild to watch. But yeah, he's doing it on purpose.
So when I look at it, I am concerned. I watch some of the things Trump is doing, and I wonder if he's actually being affected by some of his critics on the right. I watch what's going on with Gaza, what's happening with Iran. I have my concerns as we are this far into it now, and thinking, okay, what is really happening? I've talked about those things on other podcasts, so don't want to get into that right now. But looking at this also moving forward, I wouldn't say that this movement on the right or what Tucker Carlson is doing is going to lose steam. I think it's gaining. And the problem is the people that are my age that we would call ourselves Christian Zionists. You look at younger people that are coming up, you project out just 5 years and you listen to what they are saying. They're done with Israel. They don't, and unfortunately, these are people who claim to believe the Bible, as Tucker Carlson claims he does. Yeah. Well, if you really believed it, you would go back and read it and realize, well, wait a minute, who invented the word Zion? Well, God did. Yeah. 152 times in the King James Bible favorably, and he chose, what did he do? So God chose, this is interesting to me, Bill, he chose a people. He chose Abraham, is what he did. Not because he's better than anybody else, none of that. But he chose Abraham, calls him out of the land of his fathers, Ur of Chaldeans. He comes into the land, he's going to give him the promised land, which is the boundaries of Israel today, plus a heck of a lot more. He's going to give him that land. So he creates a people, he creates a nation. He even gives them different things, including circumcision, to prove that they are his. It was all of this was a set apart people for his purposes. So you have that, and then you launch into the very fact that what God was doing is bringing us the Messiah through these people.
Absolutely.
And he's the Jewish Messiah. And he's also coming back. Now, here's something else that the Tucker Carlson, CNN, Fox News, nobody will talk about this. Here's a very interesting thing. God has done something with Israel that no other nation, it's never happened before. They have 5 land purchases in the Old Testament. Israel did. They have 2 land purchases in Samaria, 2 in Judea, and actually you take Jerusalem, which would also be in the heart of Judea. So you have David at the threshing floor of Aruna. Jeremiah purchases land from his cousin. You have Omri who in Judea. You have Abraham purchases Hebron, which is in Judea. Omri purchases land in Samaria and calls it Samaria. And Jacob, the area of Shechem. So you have these land purchases. Israel was victorious. All of those who God said, go into the promised land, and these people are going to destroy you, you need to eliminate them. Those people groups no longer exist. The Hittites, the Amorites, on down the list. None of them exist. They're gone.
Yeah.
They can make no ancestral claim to the promised land. God saw this day coming, so he has these things happen. He eliminates those people, including the Philistines. Since they were eliminated, the devil had to create a new people based on the name Philistine, which is fake. So they're limited. You have nobody who can claim the land but the people of Israel. Then they move out. God brings them back twice. Then when they come back in, they purchase the land. They repurchase the land from the Arabs who didn't even want the land because they said this land is worthless at an increased price. And they continue to defeat all of their enemies. They're recognized as a nation. The Balfour, the British mandate gives them the land. Then the UN gives them this much land. Then there's battle to eliminate them. They win that. All the way across, there's nobody that can make a claim to the land except for the people of Israel, the Jews, Jacob. All the way across the board, whether it be purchase or war or politics. No, but there is not a nation on the whole planet that can make any claim anywhere near that. Yet they're the only people group that seems to be attacked for, you don't belong here, you're wicked, what are you doing here? I went on a rant there because
No, that was that's actually a great summation of their historical right to the land. But I think it was you, Pastor Tom, on one of the tours that talked about the Bible itself being the title deed to the land. And it's fascinating to take a step back and to think that there are some people who at this stage want to sort of extricate that out of the scripture. They want to actually kind of excise that whole portion of significant biblical identity out. They just want to lift it out and reimagine and recast the nation of Israel as something else completely. What's fascinating too is it's happening in the face of one of the most incredible modern miracles we have ever witnessed. Can a nation be born in a day? And here you have this what has been a parallel to what has occurred in biblical history before that we read about, and that not even a little more than a generation ago, it's happened again, and they've been drawn back to the land. It's just remarkable. And Pastor Tom, you and I've been there many times to see. It is absolutely incredible what they have accomplished in such a short time. And you said it yourself that the Arabs who were willing to let the land go didn't see much value in it, didn't have the imagination to do what the Israelis have done, what the Jewish people have done. And it's remarkable to see what they've done. Tel Aviv is a thriving metropolis. It drives innovation in the tech world in ways that are remarkable. One person said, and I love this analogy, that they really punch above their weight class in the contributions that they make. I watched a video of Victor Davis Hansen, who's a farmer in Northern California, who talked about how drip irrigation was invented by the Israelis. and how that completely revolutionized the way that crops were raised and harvested. So there really are truly remarkable people. And when you think about, just take a step back and try to be objective and think about that there's such a small percentage of the total population of people on the earth, insignificant, like less than a rounding error, and yet somehow or another there's so much hatred fomented toward them, and they're responsible for so much. They're held responsible for so much, and there's just this little insignificant people who just want to have their own country. As you study the region and you recognize that there are 22 Arab nations around them. They're the one Jewish state in existence in the entire world. And people are just preoccupied with the fact about whether or not they're even allowed to have a state. And why?
Yeah.
Why? Why? Because they are God's people. I mean, all the objections and the anger and the hatred and the vitriol that directed toward them don't diminish the Jewish people. They actually confirm them. When you really understand the scripture, you look at it, you say it makes total sense. Why wouldn't Satan totally hate and want to marginalize and defile and annihilate the Jewish people when God chose them to be the avenue through which he would bring salvation into the world?
Yeah. While you're talking, I'm thinking of this map, and it shows Israel right in the middle, surrounded by all the green-colored nations, the various Arab communities, and then this tiny, tiny little Israel. You can barely even see it without a magnifying glass. And you look, you go, so this is the tiny nation that all of the world is saying is just going to destroy everybody. They're all worried about. Why is it that there's these attempts to rally 2 billion Muslims? And neither of us are saying everybody that's Muslim wants to destroy Israel.
Exactly.
But there's obviously that element. But in that, why is it that here on both the right and the left in the Western world, yes, let's team up with the Muslims and get rid of Israel? It makes no sense except from the spiritual side of this. And then, Bill, also there's something else. You can speak on this. People might look at you. You run tours, Nahal tours. In fact, we have a tour coming up in October that you have helped me to put together with. I want to talk a little bit about that, but then, let's talk about it right now. So we have, it's Olivier Melnick and Pastor Brent Holthouse and myself in the Galilee region to really help people understand. It's a full tour, Bill, and a conference. Can you speak a little bit about this? Because, I mean, it's just to be enlightened on the truth of past, present, and promise, too. What's coming. In fact, that's what we've called it. Israel, past, present, and promise.
Yes. Yeah. So my wife Hillary and I, we do tours to Israel because we love Israel. And to touch on something that you had mentioned earlier about young people drifting away, I want to kind of get a running start into talking about the tour by making this point. Between COVID and the war, we lost a good 5 years, I would say, roughly, of tourism. Not that people didn't sporadically go in or little drips and drabs, but compared to what was happening in 2019, where I think you have 4.5 million people visiting the country and seeing the country firsthand, over the past 5 years, we haven't had even a fraction of that work taking place. And so when I see anti-Semitism on the rise in correlation with that historical reality, the fact that people haven't been going to see Israel, makes total sense to me. We lost a lot of time to give people an authentic firsthand experience of what it's like to be in the land and to see the people and to enjoy their hospitality and to know their heart and to understand the complications that they have to deal with on a daily basis. And so a big part of the reason why not unnecessarily, maybe I'm overly optimistic about this, but I think that as tourism reopens and we can start to get people over there for them to see it for themselves, that we may be able to mitigate to some degree this trend that we're seeing, particularly in young people, where they've just decided that the Jews are evil and that Israel's the problem. When you get there, if you have any semblance of faith in your heart and you're a young person and you're standing on the shores of Galilee and you're reading the word as you're looking at it, or you stand in that Capernaum synagogue and you think of the man with the withered hand and think about your own withered character and how the Lord will heal it if you stretch it out. Like, we've lost so much of that over the past 5 years that we have to reestablish. This is exactly why we're doing tourism. This is why it's so important to us, because we really, truly believe that the best way to stir a depth of spiritual reality in the hearts and minds of people here is to take them there so that they can see it for themselves. This is not some chapter written in a fantasy novel, Lord of the Rings or whatnot. There's real history, real archaeology. And when you go and you encounter it for yourself personally, it's indescribable, the sense of enrichment and how much more deeply personal all the promises of God become in your life as an individual who's just going through your own daily life, trying to get by and understand how to make sense of living in a fallen world. Well, when you take a break from that fallen world for 10 days and you go over and put your feet on the ground where Jesus walked, where he lived, where he ministered, where he overturned the work of the enemy, where he won forgiveness for our sin, and where he secured for us what the Bible tells us is a hope that we have that's undefiled and fadeth not away, kept in heaven for us. The fact that we can go there and we can see it and enjoy it, touch it, think about it, is the thing that we've lost the past 5 years that we have to reestablish. And Pastor Tom, we love you for this because you have such a heart to see this work go forward and understand all of this so well. And it's one of the reasons why you've been such a wonderful partner over the past few years in getting this done. And this conference, this tour and conference that we're going to do in October, basically encompasses all of the convictions that we have. You and I went into Israel very shortly after October 7th. And, both of us have been down to see what atrocities were wrought on the Jewish people down in Gaza and in that whole region. And our hearts were wounded, to think that there could be such hatred stirred up against the people that people would rationalize and justify perpetrating acts like that against an innocent population, and so it has stirred this conviction in us over the years that we've got to get people back there. And this tour that we're doing in October is another step in that effort to reacquaint people with a proper understanding of what it actually means that there is a nation that exists that's called Israel, that there is a nation today that we can travel to, that we can spend time in, that we can get to know and become familiar with. And there's nothing in my life that I could think of that I could do that would bring me into a deeper sense or deeper appreciation or sense of understanding for how rich and wonderful our scriptures are. And, it's fascinating because part of what we're seeing in what's been borne out in the anti-Semitism we're seeing right now, that especially some of it being expressed within the church, is that the Jewish roots of the faith have been ripped out. And you can actually go back over the course of church history and study. There are various thresholds that occurred that began to disintegrate people's Gentile understanding in particular of the Jewishness of our faith, of the Jewish roots of our faith. Initially, when the church was established, it was primarily all Jewish. And then only roughly 37 years after it was established, the icon of Jewish life was completely destroyed. The Roman Empire, not one stone left upon the other. The temple was completely destroyed. The nation was dispersed. Jewish identity was destroyed. But during that time, also, there was a demographic shift where the Gentile population started to increase and outnumber the Jewish population. Then you had, as you move into the 300s, there were 3 edicts that were issued that ultimately ended up protecting Christianity as a religion, making space for it, and then ultimately venerating it as a national religion of the Roman Empire. And when it became a national religion, it undertook all the encumbrances of public life within the Roman Empire and drifted during that time. The categories started to harden and drift away from the Jewish roots of the faith. And through that time, to make a longer story, and a very interesting course of study, I would encourage anybody to do this, to make a longer story short, we've lost sight of how beautiful the Jewish roots of our faith are. And as a result of which, we've lost so many wonderful insights that can be yielded by understanding, for example, the feasts or understanding Jewish culture. And so as we bring people over and begin to reestablish tourism, and I'm so excited about this tour in October because we've dedicated time to have a conference in the Galilee where we're going to come together as a people and make the declaration in our hearts that we're going to maintain a biblical perspective of this nation, and that we're not going to let any current political winds deny us of the beautiful reality that God has given to us in this time in human history, that Israel exists and we can go and we can enjoy it, and we can think about how he's kept his covenant promises toward that people. He's going to finish the work that he began in us. There's so much treasure there. The fact that we're going to be able to do it, it is the central target of what it is that we're aiming for in traveling people to Israel. So I've covered a lot of different things there, but what I would like to say in conclusion, to answering your question, is yes, we're going to be together in October in the Galilee. We're going to gather around the beauty of God's word and recognize and marvel over the fact that he's been faithful to that people, that they're still there and they're thriving, and that the God of Israel keeps his covenants. And then we're going to let that wash over us and edify us and help us to understand that that same covenant keeping God is the one who loved us and saved us and will shepherd us into eternity. So yeah, we're excited about tourism. It's so much more than tourism. It's a pilgrimage. It's an affirmation of an understanding of the deepest and most important things about our faith. And to get to go and do it there is a wonderful privilege, and we'll do it as long as we can. Yeah. We'll do it as long as we can.
Indeed, I love just going on the Sea of Galilee and being on a boat, going to Capernaum, going to Magdala, visiting these different Mount of Olives, being in Jerusalem, seeing the Western Wall, and tying it all in and helping people have the right perspective. I was on a recent trip when I was there, and I asked the people, how many of you have never been here before? Almost everybody's hand went up. Yeah. And it was within 2 days of the trip. And I asked simply, is this different, what you've already experienced, than what you thought it was going to be when you left home? And all of them, and then I asked that repeatedly throughout the trip, totally different from the government to the things that are being said about Israel right now, the safety of it. It was all just completely different, to the point where there's such a joy in everything. But also, here's another couple of other things I do want to get at. Are we saying when someone like us, we we get the Bible and we want people to see it for themselves, and it'll open up people's eyes in a way that you can't just do it via video. But I'm not saying this, I don't think you are either, that everything the Israeli government does is righteous and true, and whatever they decide, we're on board with. I mean, I've never thought of anything so absurd as that, or whatever decision the IDF makes, I'm totally on board with it. I've never thought that. Almost anybody in Israel doesn't even think that. But we are accused of these absurd things, like setting up the straw man argument. Yeah. You believe this, therefore it's true. But that's simply a lie that's out there.
Yeah, it's part of that mispositioning that we were talking about earlier when we were talking about Tucker. They misposition these statements in such a way to create a rift. And then when they create the rift, they start to operate other agendas to want to separate us from the things, from our understanding of Israel that lends itself to having a deep and complete and a fuller biblical understanding. Yeah, and I don't know any Christian Zionists. I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know any Christian Zionists who think that the government of Israel should be immune from criticism, and that we somehow or another have lost our critical mind to be able to think along those lines at all, just absurd, because we recognize Israel's position within the biblical story.
Yeah, it's absurd. I saw some comments about Mike Huckabee as if Mike Huckabee goes to that place to be the apologist for all things bad regarding Israel. I thought, this is just absolutely absurd. But there are some things. So you'll see these kind of things brought up in videos where you have the ultra-Orthodox, I'll call them, the Haredi, Haredim. And there are some, and Tucker Carlson, there's some extreme Jews that will spit on you if you're a Christian. Well, there are, but they're extreme. It's not the norm. In fact, the Jews over in Israel, even the religious ones, are thinking, I'm not talking about Haredi, but they're looking at them saying, we don't dig what they do at all.
Right.
We're not supportive of pretty much anything that they do. But they're brought into the public as if this is the normal Jewish thing towards anybody that's Christian, which is totally absurd. But yet these lies are out there, and for people to be able to see, oh, I was being lied to, I think is just a necessary thing. But it's great also because you get to be in Israel, experience these things, and I tell people, see for yourself, and you get to be in the land of the Lord.
Absolutely. You raised such an interesting point. When people are attempting to create this tension in our understanding about whether or not we should view Israel as adversarial, you'll notice they do exactly what you just described. They flatten Jewish identity. As if, we've been there. We know that there's a lot of complexities and beautiful nuance in the society over there. They live right alongside their Arab brothers and sisters. And listen, I will say this too, and Pastor Tom, I know you agree with me. There are some beautiful strands of culture and life within the Arab community. We know a lot of Arab Christians that we love very deeply and very dearly. So there's a lot of nuance and complexity over in that part of the world. And it's just too easy if a person wants to flatten Jewish identity just down to the Haredi kid who is spitting on a priest or spitting on a pastor, then it actually says more about the prejudice that they have, a pre-existing prejudice that they have that confirms, rather than that they really want to understand the way that things operate over there and the way that things go over there. I remember there was one video where Candace thought that because there were 4 quarters in the old city that there was segregation there.
Well, she still unbelievable. She still says that idiotic stuff. I mean, and these people are pretty smart, you know.
They've never been, but yeah.
But, I mean, and you go, oh my goodness, this is just such absurdity. Let me ask you this, Bill. I want to thank you for your time today. Love to have you back on, but I want to talk about the Christ is King movement. And because I see it as you have truth, but in it, it's an attempt to, if you support Israel, then Christ isn't your king. You know, Jesus isn't really Lord of your life. You know, this kind of thinking. Right. But walk us through a little bit, just take a couple of minutes over the Christ is King movement and your thoughts on it.
I would be happy to, yeah. So this expression is adopted in a very calculated fashion. And I think as I've kind of have looked through and researched it a little bit, it originated with Nick Fuentes, who is an avowed anti-Semite and kind of has led the charge among those young people that we were talking about earlier, that contingent of young people. And he intentionally selected that as the battle cry for the group of people that he represents because it's unimpeachable on its face. Christ is King. He is indeed. We all agree. But again, it's that mispositioning. It's that subtle mispositioning where it, in effect, the reason why he chose that is because he wants to set a moral boundary between himself and the Jewish community. He's actually not using that term as a theological declaration. He's using it as a dog whistle to create boundaries where Jews are not welcome, where Jews are marginalized and recognized in ways that are not consistent with their character or their contributions to society. And so what inevitably ends up happening is that the people who are nominal and maybe not paying attention so much will kind of naively say, yeah, Christ is King, and they jump on board. But what they don't realize they're doing is they're giving ascendancy to a very sinister and sadistic ideological school of ideological thought. And so, yeah, Christ is King. Absolutely, Christ is King. Any believer would readily declare that and recognize it. The ones who really mean it in their heart, and the ones who are utilizing it for some political purposes or to coalesce a constituency are just using it as a dog whistle to stir up anti-Semitism. And you can see the difference in the article. I write a little bit about it. Listen, Christ is King is not even logical, in the sense that they are trying to suggest it, because he was born within the Jewish covenant story. I think our friend Jeff Morgan said when he was talking about this the other day, it didn't say founder of Christianity above him on the cross. It said King of the Jews. Mm-hmm. And so to try to extricate Jewish identity out of the Gospels, out of Jesus, who was a Torah observant Jewish rabbi, right? Who spent time at the temple debating Torah. I mean, it's like to try to sort of take all of that identity out of Christianity really makes a monstrosity out of it. And so these are the types of things you have to pay attention to. Christ as King means something, but it means something very different to people who are wielding it in popular culture, who want to marginalize the Jewish people. So it's mispositioning. It's that mispositioning, and we need discernment for it.
A similar dynamic, I know I had this conversation with you, it happened in Nazi Germany, where I think it was 80% of the churches and pastors went along with death camps, gassing Jews, and so forth.
Yes.
And in order to get everybody under one umbrella, they formed an official movement called the German Christians movement. So if you're really of Christ, you'll be in the German Christians movement, which was a movement to eliminate the Jews and de-Judaize the New Testament.
Exactly.
And so we see it's come back, and it's coming from all different angles now with very loud voices, but we have an opportunity to speak the truth. That's what we do here. I mean, it's like we've got to, we have to combat the lies with the truth. So that's what we do. And I want to thank you for joining me. And again, everybody,
pleasure.
You can find Bill at nahalltours.com. You see the link there. But also, we have this group coming in October to Israel, Pastor Brandon Holthouse, Olivier Melnick, and myself. And you can go to our website, my website, hopeforourtimes.com. It'll take you exactly where you need to go, and you can register with whoever it is that you want to be your group leader. You can register with me, with Pastor Brandon, with Olivier, whoever you want. And we'll be doing our tours through the day, Sea of Galilee, Jerusalem, all the incredible places, City of David, Pool of Siloam, all of these things. But at night, we're going to get together for worship in Galilee.
Yes.
And we have early days too, Bill. I think you and I talked about this. We're getting back to the hotels early. They're resorts, really, is what they are.
Beautiful property in the north, yeah.
Yeah, just absolutely. And David's Citadel in Jerusalem. And then, so you look, you go, this is really off the charts. So we get back early in the afternoons in Galilee so you can relax, enjoy, just take it all in. In the evening, we get together, we worship with some Israeli worship leaders, worshiping Yeshua, along with different speakers are going to be there on the 3 nights in the Galilee for the conference. You're going to get to, I just can't wait. It's going to be just so cool to be able to get the understanding, the past, the present, Israel, past, present, promise, and all these things. You have any final things you want to say, Bill?
I would just echo everything that you've said, Pastor Tom. It's a wonderful time to stand and be counted right now. And I think that we're very fortunate. The Lord has given us this wonderful open door, and we should walk through it, and walk through it boldly and receive all the things that he wants to sow into our hearts of his word, understanding his people, the land, recognizing that he's a covenant-keeping God. The callings of God are irrevocable. The promises of God are irrevocable, and they're toward the nation and they're toward us. And I would just encourage anyone for whom this is stirring their heart. If you're listening to this and it's stirring your heart, pray about joining us. Maybe the Lord's touching you. Maybe he's drawing you. And maybe it's time, for you as well as it is for us, just to put our stake in the sand and to say, no, this is what we believe. This is why we believe it. We're going to get together and affirm it. And in this particular instance, Pastor Tom, what a wonderful privilege that we're going to get to be able to do those things together while we're in Israel, while we're in the Galilee. It's just going to be amazing. I cannot wait.
That's very cool. Thank you, Bill, for joining me. Go to thehalltours.com. Check out Bill, and he's on Facebook, too. You're going to absolutely love his posts. Very informative, very educational. And then also, if you would like, share, and subscribe to this channel, too. God bless you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Tom.